Welcome and thank you for joining us for Meet the Makers inside VS Code for Education. In this series, we're taking you behind the scenes to meet the team contributing to the future of Visual Studio Code for Education. My name's Adam Smeets and I'm a product manager on the VS Code for Education team at Microsoft. And today we're sitting down with Alex to explore his experiences as a designer and journey that shapes the Visual Studio Code for Education platform. Whether you're an educator, a student, or just passionate about technology, get ready to dive into the story about how VS Code for Education is empowering the next generation of coders. Alex, thank you so much for joining us today. Let's kick things off with learning a bit more about you. So tell us about your role at Microsoft, and can you give us a peek into what a typical day looks like for you?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a senior user experience designer. Sometimes they may call them product designer. Typical day is it's a tough question, mainly because design goes through such different sorts of stages and stuff. So depending on where we are that day, I'm doing slightly different things. But in the end, I tend to really try to focus on creating, innovative, engaging types of interfaces. I might be conducting some user research. I might be talking to my team. I might be talking to educators, talking to students and learning from everybody. Designing so a lot of the visual artifacts and things like that. So experimenting with those prototypes. So putting them in front of users, getting feedback, sort of reacting to those feedbacks, iterating, things like that. And a lot of, these prototypes, we'll learn from them. We'll make decisions based on what we learn from them. Tons of collaboration. I think that's sort of a piece of design that maybe isn't as widely understood. The amount of collaboration that's required with, your developers, with your product people. Really, it's sort of like a team effort to make sure that we create these experiences that are seamless and feel good to the user that's using them. I love to learn by doing. It is sort of a big philosophy for me. I like to create things and use those artifacts to sort of keep the engine going and helping us make good decisions.
Awesome. Yeah, Alex, it's been a pleasure up to this point working with you, because it's a lot of the design experience and things that you bring to the table for this are like the glue, right? That bring the design, the engineering work, all the code and programming that takes place, all the ideas that we have about what the program should do and what the platform should offer, and then actually crystallizing that with an interface and experience and bringing the research forward that shows that is always magical. So thank you for that great work. So you've talked about a lot of things that happen in a day or in a week or in a given time period. What's the thing you really love about the work that you do?
I found myself in this sort of intersection of things that I've always been super passionate about, and I'm really, really fortunate, to be in a position that I am. Really, where it comes down to is sort of in that intersection of creativity. I've always liked to make things and things like that. So creativity, creation, and then education was something that kind of became really important to me as I progressed in my career. And, I got to do some work within education realm. And I found that super valuable and inspiring in terms of the work that I've done. I taught for a long time, for 6 years in the classroom, teaching non-computer science majors, how to code. They were also designers, so I kind of knew what it was to be a designer entering the technical field and how scary that might be. Helping them get through that hurdle and finding the value and how it could impact their future career and stuff is super rewarding for me. That's what I love about this product. I feel like the tools that we make will really help empower other teachers to sort of kind of drive that same mission forward, which is really exciting for me.
So love what you share with us about working with students who maybe first going into the field, working through this concept of imposter syndrome and your work through teaching and bringing that passion for education into the work that you do. For students that might be watching the podcast that we're doing right now, what would you say to them if they're just starting out in the field of design, the field of computer science, like the great first step or an action or a belief that they should have as they're exploring?
Yeah, I mean, I think, going into that experience with an open mind, sort of with curiosity. Like I've always been a big proponent of sort of like letting curiosity sort of take you forward, understanding that it's okay to ask questions. You know, like I found at least what one of the biggest hurdles when I was teaching also was like just how a lot of students they were scared to ask questions, and trying to get through that and being like, what, like mistakes and these sorts of things are essentially part of the process. This goes for design and with like development and coding, right? There is no, like you can't get to where you want to be or where you want to go without making some mistakes around like along the way, and taking those mistakes, learning from those mistakes, and kind of building as you go. And it's sort of like this journeys. Like I feel like students a lot of times have been sort of raised to, it's like right or wrong. That's not the way it works in both design or coding, right? It's like being wrong is just part of the process, right? And like being okay with that and learning how to take those mistakes and turn those into learning, and then sort of building off of that. Once they get past that obstacle, at least in my experience, it's felt a lot smoother, and it allowed me and the students to have more of a sort of relationship in terms of like a coach kind of thing, where I'm sort of able to guide them, and it's not so punitive and like, oh no,
We are so wired to not want to make mistakes or make an error or make any pieces. But I think more and more we've adopted as a team this culture of failing fast, right? That failing isn't a bad thing. That we've learned something from that. We figured out something we didn't know before and how to track a path forward to make that happen. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's really important for students to hear that it's not always about the A, it's not always about the B, it's about what did you learn from that experience and how will you apply that in the future moving forward. So thank you for putting that out there. The focus of this series is also about about learning pathways or journeys into career, right? So what got you interested in working in design?
Yeah, so I mean, like I mentioned before, I've always been curious, and creative, right? So I was actually an art major, so I had a very non-traditional path, and I was not always a designer. I was actually a programmer for many, almost a little bit more than a decade. I was a developer. So, and the funny thing is that I never intended to be either of those. I was an art major, and really what kind of motivated me was actually not learning how to code at all. It was my art, right? It was basically like I was doing some stuff and I wanted to make my art move. And I really, really wanted to make it move. And the means to make it move was code. So I learned to code more as just like I would learn how to use a sewing machine if I needed to sew. It was just a tool that I needed to figure out in order to get the actual like output that I wanted. So I was super motivated to get the output that I wanted. That it sort of really helped me get through I feel like motivation like that sort of helps, especially for a person, like I said, I was not a coder at all. To help a person like that have the grit and rigor to get through like those moments where things are really, really tough is really, really important. And it really helped me kind of develop all these skills. Like as I created these art things, like the skills and things that I learned didn't just disappear, right? Right? They're still there, right? Now it's just another tool in my toolbox. And I became pretty good, and I ended up getting a job as a coder. Completely unintentional, but that's sort of, and the same thing goes with design and sort of UX, right? So as I was doing, now I was coding. I had this. There was this before UX and things existed. I had this my title was creative engineer, which is basically I was a designer who could code, basically. So I did a lot of like R&D type stuff. And, I got into research and like even like more on the design side, and eventually I kind of fell into user experience and things like that. So I guess for me, and I think for a lot of people, it's never been a very straight line. you know, like I was kind of weaving in and out, and I was basically just, like I said, following my curiosity, and sort of, my experiences kind of led me to the next sort of step in my career.
What I love about that Alex, is that I think so many students, whether even in high school, think that they need to have everything figured out. They know exactly what they're going to do. They know exactly the career path they're going to take. And in each one of these videos, and even in my own journey, right, nothing is ever the direct path that we're thinking it is. And even when we think we have it figured out, something else presents itself that's really intriguing and exciting that we want to pursue. And so I always find myself surprised by that next direction or next piece that's there. So thank you for illuminating that as a concept for students to hear. That things work out too when you follow curiosity and when you follow excitement and follow a pathway of things that you're really interested in. So if you're thinking of students right now who, again, might be watching and thinking about if they want to work with design or they want to work with technology, you've talked to us about curiosity. You've talked to us about following excitement and passion in these spaces. What's the biggest lesson you've learned along the way that you would share with students?
Well, it's okay to not have all the answers, especially in design. When you're asked to solve a problem, you're not necessarily expected to know what the answer is. As a matter of fact, like, it's probably the opposite. Your job as a designer, product designer, thing like that, is to sort of really kind of be humble and be willing to figure out ways in order for you to better understand the problem, be able to communicate with your customer, empathize with them, really try to help them articulate, what they're trying to achieve, what's blocking them, what they like about, both, like what they like about what they're doing, what's sort of getting in their way. And then being able to sort of communicate that with your team and really sort of think through, ways to help alleviate that pain in some way. But then also, even when you get there, it kind of sort of the same thing. It's like understanding that, trying to come up with a solution for someone is going to, that's going to be a bumpy ride, right? You're probably not going to get it right the first time. You might not get it right the fifth time. You have to be okay and embrace that failure and sort of create that sort of, that cycle of like trying things, experimenting things, learning, and then being able to iterate on, each step of the way. And every step, typically is going to take you a little closer to being, to hitting what it is that you're trying to hit on.
I would say, Alex, you could lead the masterclass around the concept of like iterative design, iterative development, and conversations, right? I've never had an experience with you where we haven't gone through this innovation cycle and talking through ideas and figuring out pieces that make them happen. I think that's beautiful about our product design process, and also around just the type of work that you do. It's never about like Alex's ideas or Alex the designer. It's about the product, the design. Let's figure out how we push it and move it forward. Also doesn't surprise me knowing you, at least from our work day to day, but for our audience, especially with your work as an educator currently and previously, being the lifelong learner as well as being the teacher as coach rather than teach as solo sage. This is directly in line with the type of work and philosophy that you have. It's one of the last questions I was going to ask during our time together is around our work with educators, right? So do you have any advice for educators who might be watching, who are trying to help students prepare for careers in tech or related fields? What suggestions or ideas would you give to them?
I guess the first thing would be understanding that every single classroom is different, So I mean, obviously, I've tried different things. Even in my own classrooms, every year, I get a different sort of cohort of students, and even with that, there's still differences here and there. So the way that you approach every single classroom is going to shift, right, based on classroom to classroom and things like that. Fostering, an environment where it's okay, to make mistakes, and sort of also acknowledging some of that sort of fear that these students are sort of coming into your classroom with, and sort of having a plan on how to sort of help alleviate that. And I mentioned this before too, it's like motivation, I think, is super important. It's important to me. That's how sort of I got into it, right? So it's like, how could you create experiences in the classroom that sort of are authentic and meaningful to your students, whatever that might be. I taught in an ed tech program. I tried to sort of create experiences that sort of really aligned and felt very relevant to the things that community, my community of 20 students, 25 students, were really passionate about. And I use that as my anchor to sort of help them find meaning in all of the different sort of complex concepts that I was trying to teach them. And they, really understood how they would apply them in their world. I always think a lot about kind of that sort of incremental scaffolding, and sort of like how you sort of, reduce that scaffolding, throughout that sort of learner's journey, and really give them an opportunity to apply the things, as complex, as difficult as that might be for them. I think, creating something that's meaningful and using that as a way for them to sort of, to really apply and create something that they can be proud of, a way to allow them to make an impact in their world somehow. And I know it's something that we speak about a lot internally, in terms of like, how could we empower students to create products that make a difference and feel relevant to them? Hopefully that's something that, will translate into a lot of cool projects that students are going to be excited about.
Well, Alex, I think those are really great things to share out for teachers, and I think are really relevant to the classroom experience. Again, thank you so much for sharing your time and experiences as part of Meet the Makers series, Alex. As a reminder, VS Code for Education is a free online computer science education platform. It provides an integrated curriculum and a sandbox coding environment for everyone. With zero setup, anyone can be a developer and start learning to code with VS Code, the code editor preferred by software development professionals around the world. Check out the links in the video's description. And until our next video, thanks for watching. And remember, when you're in doubt, comment it out. Have a great day.